Even when everything feels out of control, God is still in control. This is the truth you must anchor your soul to, because without it, you will drift into despair. With it, you will rise with strength that cannot be explained by human reasoning. Every person will face moments when control slips from their hands. No matter how powerful, how wise, or how prepared you think you are, there comes a time when life unravels before your eyes. The plans you made collapse. The doors you counted on shut. The relationships you leaned on break. And suddenly, you are faced with a void you never expected. It is in those very moments that the temptation to fear is greatest. Fear tells you, you are alone. No one sees you. No one can help you. But trust in God silences that fear with one thunderous truth. God is here. God sees you. God holds you. God will never fail you. You may not control the chaos, but God controls the universe. And if God controls the universe, then your storm is not greater than His power. You must understand this with the deepest conviction. Trusting God is not an option in times of crisis. It is the very foundation of survival. Without trust in God, the winds of despair will tear you apart. Without trust in God, every disappointment will crush your spirit. Without trust in God, you will drown in your own confusion. But with trust in God, you can face the impossible with confidence. With trust in God, you can walk through fire without being consumed. With trust in God, you can hold your peace when the whole world shakes, because you know something greater than what your eyes see. You know that God is greater than every obstacle before you. Many people only trust God when life is smooth, when money is in their pockets, when health is in their body, when friends surround them, when everything is predictable. Then they say, I trust God. But true trust is not tested in comfort. True trust is tested in chaos. When the bills are due and you have no way to pay them, will you trust God? When your health fails and doctors give no answers, will you trust God? When those closest to you betray you, will you trust God? When every plan you made shatters into pieces, will you trust God? Trust is not born in ease, it is born in fire. And those who pass through the fire with unwavering trust will come out unshakable, unstoppable, unbreakable, because their confidence is not in what they see, but in the one who rules what cannot be seen. Do not be deceived by your emotions. Your feelings may betray you. Fear may rise like a flood. Anxiety may whisper that you are finished. Doubt may creep in like a shadow. But feelings do not determine truth. The truth is that God has not changed. God has not lost His power. God has not left the throne. God is not confused about your future. When you cannot see the way forward, God already has the path laid out. When you do not understand the purpose of your pain, God already knows the blessing hidden inside it. When you are weak and exhausted, God is still strong and mighty. Trusting God means leaning on His eternal stability when everything in your life feels unstable. There will be moments when the silence of God feels unbearable. You pray and nothing seems to change. You cry and no answer comes. You look for a sign, but the heavens seem closed. That silence is the testing ground of your trust. Will you still believe that God is working when you cannot see His hand? Will you still believe that God is near when you cannot feel His presence? Will you still believe that God is faithful when everything looks like failure? Trusting God in silence is one of the greatest acts of faith, because it declares, even if I cannot hear, I will still believe. Even if I cannot see, I will still walk forward. Even if I cannot feel, I will still know God is with me. That level of trust shakes the foundations of despair and unleashes strength that the world cannot explain. Think of your life like a tapestry being woven by God's hand. From your perspective, you only see the knots, the tangled threads, the messy underside of the cloth. It looks chaotic, purposeless, confusing. But from God's perspective, the design is perfect, beautiful, complete. What looks like chaos to you is order in the hands of God. What looks like pain to you is preparation in the plan of God. What looks like loss to you is positioning in the wisdom of God. This is why you must trust Him even when nothing makes sense. Because when He turns the tapestry over, when He reveals the side He has been working on, you will see that every tear, every disappointment, every delay, every heartbreak was part of a pattern more beautiful than you could have imagined. The enemy wants you to doubt. The enemy wants you to question. The enemy wants you to believe that because life is out of your control, it is also out of God's control. But that is a lie. Nothing escapes God's authority. Nothing bypasses His sight. Nothing overrides His will. If the storm rages, it is because God allowed it. And if He allowed it, it is not to destroy you, but to strengthen you. If doors closed, it is because God shut them. And if He shut them, it is because He has a greater door waiting to open. If people walked away, it is because God removed them. And if He removed them, it is because they could not go where He is taking you. Trusting God means believing that every shift, every loss, every change is divinely orchestrated for your good, even when it feels painful in the moment. You see, control is an illusion. You never had control to begin with. You thought you controlled your career, but a single decision by someone else can change everything. You thought you controlled your health, but one unexpected diagnosis can alter your entire life. You thought you controlled your relationships, but people's choices are beyond your grasp. What you call control is fragile, temporary, uncertain. But God's control is eternal, unshakable, absolute. This is why trusting Him is freedom. Because you stop carrying the burden of trying to control what you were never meant to carry. You release it into the hands of the one who already holds it all. And in that release, you find peace, rest, and strength that human effort can never give. Trusting God does not mean you will never cry. Trusting God does not mean you will never feel weak. Trusting God does not mean you will never face fear. Trusting God means that even in your tears, you believe He is your comfort. Even in your weakness, you believe He is your strength. Even in your fear, you believe He is your shield. It is not about pretending life is easy. It is about declaring that even when life is crushing, God is greater. That declaration, spoken with faith, opens doors no man can shut. That declaration lifts your spirit when nothing else can. That declaration places you in alignment with God's power, and nothing in this world can stand against it. Look back at your own life. Think of the moments you thought you would not survive, yet here you are. Think of the nights you cried, yet morning still came. Think of the doors that shut, yet others opened. Think of the times you thought you were finished, yet somehow you were lifted up again. Who carried you? Who sustained you? Who made a way when there was no way? It was God. And if God has done it before, He will do it again. The same God who held you yesterday is holding you today, and He will hold you tomorrow. This is the certainty of trust. Not in your ability to control, but in God's faithfulness to never let go. When everything feels out of control, declare this over your life: God is my anchor. God is my refuge. God is my strength. God is my guide. God is my hope. Speak it until your spirit believes it. Speak it until your fear bows to it. Speak it until your mind aligns with it. The power of trust is not silent. It is a weapon you must use against despair. When your situation screams chaos, let your trust scream louder. God is still in control. When the storm rages and the waves rise higher than your strength, you must remember this one truth: you are not called to master the storm. You are called to trust the one who rules over it. Your strength will fail. Your wisdom will falter. Your resources will run out. But God has no limits, no weakness, no end. The moment you realize this, your burden becomes lighter. You are not the savior of your life. You are not the one holding the universe together. You are not the one who must control every detail of tomorrow. That power belongs to God alone. And when you surrender to Him, when you allow your heart to rest in His authority, you find a freedom this world cannot take from you. Trust is not just believing that God exists. It is living as if God truly reigns. Many say they believe, but their actions reveal fear, doubt, and self-dependence. They try to fix everything with their own hands, and when they fail, they collapse. But those who trust in God walk differently. They do not panic when others panic. They do not fall when others fall. They do not fear when others fear. Why? Because they know something greater. God holds the final word. What He decides cannot be overturned. What He establishes cannot be destroyed. What He declares cannot be reversed. Trusting God is not passive. It is active courage in the face of impossibility. It is looking at the fire and saying, I will not be consumed, for God is my protector. It is looking at the sea and saying, I will not drown, for God is my deliverer. When your life feels like it is unraveling, you must refuse to interpret your circumstances as abandonment. Too many fall into despair because they think difficulty means God has left them. But hear this with all your heart: the presence of struggle does not mean the absence of God. In fact, some of the greatest displays of God's power come in the moments of your greatest weakness. It is in the wilderness where faith is refined. It is in the valley where trust becomes unshakable. It is in the night where the light of God shines brightest. If you only see Him in blessing, You will miss him in battle, but if you trust him in both, you will never be shaken, because you will know that he is not just the God of peace, but the God of storms as well. You must rise above the illusion of control. The more you try to control, the more frustrated you will become. Life is too unpredictable for you to manage every detail. People will disappoint you. Situations will shift. Plans will collapse. And the harder you cling to them, the more you will break. Trust in God requires release. The release of your grip on what you cannot change. Let go of the need to understand every detail. Let go of the need to predict tomorrow. Let go of the need to carry what only God can carry. This release is not weakness. It is wisdom. For when you release what you cannot control, you place it in the hands of the one who controls everything. And when God holds it, it is secure. Fear thrives in uncertainty. Anxiety grows in the soil of the unknown. But trust uproots both. Trust declares, even if I do not know the outcome, I know my God. Trust says, even if I cannot see the path, I know the one who guides me. Trust whispers in the silence, God has not forgotten me. And this whisper is more powerful than the loudest roar of fear, because fear speaks of what might happen, but trust speaks of who God is. And who God is never changes. He is eternal, unshakable, all-powerful. His nature is your anchor when the future is uncertain. Listen closely. Trusting God is not about ignoring reality. It is about seeing a higher reality. You may see lack, but God is abundance. You may see weakness, but God is strength. You may see darkness, but God is light. You may see chaos, but God is order. Faith does not deny what is in front of you. It simply refuses to let what is in front of you define the final truth. The final truth belongs to God. And when you anchor yourself in His truth, you stop living by sight and start living by conviction. There will be times when your trust in God will offend those around you. People may call you foolish for believing when everything looks hopeless. They may mock your faith because they only trust in what they can see. But hear me well, never trade your trust in God for the approval of people. People are limited, people are fragile, people change. But God remains forever. When you trust Him, even if everyone abandons you, you will still stand victorious, because God will never forsake those who put their confidence in Him. Trusting God requires patience. And patience is one of the hardest tests of faith. We live in a world that demands instant results, instant answers, instant solutions. But God does not operate according to your deadlines. He moves according to His perfect timing. And though His timing may frustrate your flesh, it is always flawless. When you rush, you miss the preparation. When you force, you damage the process. But when you wait, you allow God to complete the work in you and around you. Trusting God in the waiting is one of the purest forms of surrender, because it proves you believe He is wise enough to act at the perfect moment. You must also remember this: trust is not passive resignation, it is active alignment. It means you keep walking even when you do not see the full map. It means you keep sowing seeds of faith even when you do not yet see the harvest. It means you keep praying, keep moving, Keep believing, not because circumstances look favorable, but because you know God is faithful. Trust is movement with confidence in the unseen. It is the refusal to be paralyzed by fear. It is the determination to walk forward, even if you can only see one step at a time, because you know that if God has given you the step, He will also provide the ground beneath your feet. When everything feels out of control, remind yourself of who God is. Speak it aloud until your soul remembers. Say, God is my refuge, my shield, my fortress, my light, my guide, my strength. Let these words saturate your mind until they silence every lie of fear. Let them fill your spirit until your heart beats with courage. Trust is not just a thought, it is a declaration. It is a weapon you use against despair. And the more you declare it, the stronger you become. Look at the stories of those who trusted God before you. Men and women who faced overwhelming battles, yet chose to believe. Their circumstances were no less chaotic than yours. Their struggles were no less intense. Yet their trust became the bridge between despair and victory. What set them apart was not their strength, but their surrender. They knew that their lives were not theirs to control. They belonged to God. And because of this, they saw miracles that defied reason, breakthroughs that surpassed expectation, victories that silenced the enemy. This same God is your God. And if He has done it for them, He will do it for you. Now hear this with all conviction. The enemy cannot destroy a heart that trusts in God. The storm may rage, but it will not drown you. The fire may burn, but it will not consume you. The darkness may press, but it will not suffocate you. Why? Because trust builds an unbreakable shield around your spirit. Trust lifts you above the chaos and sets your feet on solid ground. Trust anchors you to eternal truth. When temporary circumstances scream lies, trust turns impossible situations into testimonies of God's greatness. So when everything feels out of control, do not cling to what is fading. Cling to the eternal. Do not cling to your own strength. It will fail. Do not cling to people. They may abandon you. Do not cling to possessions. They can be taken away. Cling to God alone, for He is unshakable, unchanging, everlasting. The world may tremble, but God does not tremble. The world may collapse, but God does not collapse. The world may turn upside down, but God remains steady. When you root yourself in Him, you will not only survive the storm, you will rise from it stronger, purer, and more unshakable than ever before. When life feels like it is spinning out of control, you must resist the temptation to let panic dictate your choices. Panic is the language of fear, but trust is the language of faith. Panic blinds you. It makes you react recklessly. It pushes you into decisions that you later regret. But trust in God steadies your spirit. It clears your vision. It brings wisdom into your heart even in the midst of chaos. Trusting God does not mean you will always understand, but it means you will always have direction. Even when you are surrounded by noise, there is a voice of peace that whispers to your heart, saying, "Stand still, I am with you." That is the voice of God. And when you trust Him, that voice becomes louder than the roar of the storm. You must also realize that trusting God is not just for the moments of despair. It is for every day. If you only turn to God when the world falls apart, then your trust is reactive, not rooted. But when you trust Him in the small details, when you acknowledge Him in your daily choices, when you lean on Him before you lean on yourself, then when the great storms come, your spirit will already be trained to rest in Him. Trust is not built in a moment. It is cultivated in a lifestyle. A life that constantly places God at the center will not collapse when everything else shakes. There is a great lie that whispers into the hearts of many when life unravels. If you were stronger, this would not have happened. If you were smarter, you could have avoided this. If you had more power, you would be in control. But do not fall into that trap. The measure of your strength is not in avoiding chaos. It is in who you trust when chaos arrives. You were never designed to carry the weight of the world. That burden belongs to God. True wisdom is not in pretending you can do everything. It is in knowing you cannot and surrendering to the one who can. Trust in God is the most powerful admission of strength because it humbles your pride and lifts your soul into divine alignment. Trusting God when everything feels out of control also teaches you something that nothing else can. The power of surrender. Surrender is not defeat. Surrender is not weakness. Surrender is the greatest victory because it is the decision to step aside and let God step in. When you surrender, you are saying, God, I release my limited plans for your unlimited wisdom. I release my fragile control for your perfect authority. I release my anxiety for your peace. That surrender shifts the weight from your shoulders onto His, and His shoulders are strong enough to carry all things. One of the greatest dangers when life feels uncontrollable is the desire to escape. Many people, when faced with pain or uncertainty, run toward distraction, toward addictions, toward anything that numbs their fear. But that is a counterfeit refuge. It offers temporary relief, but deeper emptiness. Trusting God is the opposite of escape. It is entering into His presence with honesty and faith. It is saying, I will not run away from my pain. I will run toward the God who heals. When you place your trust in Him, you no longer need false escapes because His presence becomes your refuge, your fortress, your stronghold in times of trouble. Trust also transforms how you see setbacks. When something fails, when a door closes, when people walk away, the natural reaction is to feel defeated. But those who trust in God do not see setbacks as endings. They see them as redirections. If a door closed, it was not your door. If a plan failed, it was not your plan. If someone left, they were not meant to walk into the future God is building for you. Trusting God teaches you to stop mourning over what you lost and start expecting what is yet to come. Because when God removes something, He always replaces it with something better. His plans are not random. His timing is not flawed. When you live in trust, every ending is simply a beginning disguised in mystery. And understand this, trust does not just affect your circumstances, it transforms your inner world. Anxiety cannot coexist with trust. Fear cannot dominate a trusting heart. But hear me clearly. God never leaves his people without weapons. God never sends his children into battle without armor. God has hidden mysteries in creation itself. And one of the most profound mysteries that carries power when placed in the hands of faith is salt. And when you freeze salt with faith, declaring the authority of God over your life, you are not performing superstition. You are declaring war on darkness and commanding the forces of witchcraft to stop cold in their tracks. Salt is no ordinary substance. It preserves, it purifies, it protects. God created salt to fight corruption, to prevent decay, to carry the symbol of covenant and permanence. Salt resists rot, and in the same way, when consecrated before God, salt in your hands resists evil. Evil seeks to rot your destiny. Witchcraft seeks to corrupt your peace. Curses seek to eat away at your blessings. But salt stands as a divine witness of preservation. And when you freeze salt, you are declaring that the corruption of the enemy, the rot of darkness, the decay of witchcraft will no longer spread in your life. You are freezing the works of evil, locking them in stillness, declaring that they can no longer advance, no longer move, no longer operate against you. The problem is that many people underestimate the schemes of the enemy. They laugh at the idea of witchcraft. They say, that belongs to old times, to ancient cultures. And yet, they cannot explain why their money disappears without reason, why their health fails without cause, why their homes are filled with endless conflict, why they are bound in habits they cannot break. They refuse to see that darkness is real. But those who are wise, those who are awake, those who look through the eyes of faith, understand that we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with powers of evil that seek to cover our lives in shadows. To those who see, God provides keys. And one of those keys is this mystery of salt. When you hold salt in your hand and lift it before God, you are holding a declaration. You are holding something that symbolizes the incorruptible nature of His covenant. And when you freeze it in faith, you are saying to every curse, every spell, every charm, every word spoken against you, enough. You will go no further. You will remain bound and powerless. The frozen salt becomes a seal of faith, a wall erected in the spiritual realm that evil cannot cross. It becomes a line drawn in the sand that witches cannot step over. It becomes a barrier around your life, declaring that you belong to God, and God alone governs your destiny. There are people who go to bed every night tormented by strange dreams. They see shadows. They feel attacks pressing upon their chest. They wake up more tired than when they slept. They hear voices whispering fear, confusion, and destruction. They see the faces of people they know working against them in the spirit. And they wonder, why me? Why am I under such attack? But listen to me, the more the enemy attacks you, the more it is proof that you are carrying something valuable. Darkness does not waste energy on the empty. Witchcraft does not pursue the insignificant. Evil does not chase after the powerless. If you are under attack, it is because God has placed something precious in you. Something the enemy fears. Something the enemy wants to stop. And that is why you must not remain passive. You must not simply accept torment as normal. You must rise in faith. Take the weapons God has given you and fight back. And one of those weapons is to take salt, consecrate it, freeze it, and declare that every attack launched against your life